This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 1st of May, 2020, and I am 2J.
I'm 2.
And I am GK. Happy Labor Day, everyone.
Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day.
So in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, painful Labor Day. In the Standard, SONKO takes on Uhuru. And in the Star, Camry exploring Corona Herbal cure.
Yes.
So shall we begin with painful Labor Day?
Yes.
Yeah, so GK, if I could just ask first, what is our criteria when we look at the headlines?
We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
I think this is a terrible headline, and I think it is so depressing and so... It's not nice in this moment when we all know that we're dealing with a lot of things.
Yeah.
So painful Labor Day, the Daily Nation says that there's nothing to celebrate, no pomp and color or news of any pay rise for workers. Instead, the conversation will be about retaining the remaining jobs and cushioning thousands of workers who've been laid off.
Can we just toss it?
I think we just toss it entirely, and I think instead we should focus on the fantastic speech that the president gave us today.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So the president gave this bold and inspiring speech at a time when, things are not looking great in this COVID-19 pandemic time. But he said as a country, we must push forward. And I think he captured that moment really well. That you can see the bright side of life.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
If anything, one of my favorite things that he said was highlighting that right now we might be in a crisis, but we should be focusing on finding opportunities within it.
Yes.
And it reminds me of, I think it was last week or the week before, where we looked at the Renaissance. How can people, while they're sat at home, don't have much to do, think about ways to innovate and change the world that they live in?
Yes, especially during a societal crisis
Absolutely.
such as
Like
this
this.
one.
But there's one thing as well I took away from this, and that is his take on what Kenyans have been saying on social media about the flowers he has sent to the UK.
Yes.
And that was tacit admission that yes, I am the one who wrote that letter. But there was a point there, because those flowers don't come from Uganda, they don't come from Somalia, they come from Kenya. Now they're made, they're actually cut flowers, they are put together by Kenyan workers.
Yes.
Now look, and he said, when you help a friend in need,
In a time of crisis.
when they get that opportunity, they will actually think about you because you help them at some point.
Yeah, and I think we can put this simply. The next time a British consumer goes into a supermarket to buy some flowers, he or she has the option to buy flowers from anywhere else.
Yes.
Yeah.
He or she may very well remember that Kenya had a kind gesture towards their country and pick Kenyan flowers up. So there's a silver lining, and I think he was just trying to say we shouldn't be so critical of every action that government must take. I do like that that it is Labor Day, and he spoke about the worker himself, right? And the character of the worker. And he said that the industry works because of the worker. And without the worker, that investment that you have is dead capital. And so just the critical nature of the individuals that you all employ. And that if the worker becomes the industry, then the economy starts to grow, and economic growth is assured. And I think it's that thing that we always say about, moving from earners of wages to owners of capital. And that's the aspirational aspect of the speech. He was telling you that you can become an entrepreneur, a great capitalist, if you just keep at it. And even your role is appreciated, however small it might be. So I thought it was very interesting.
It was fantastic. I think this was the reminder that we needed in this dark time.
And I think he tacitly may have helped people like the Fifth Estate when he said that we should promote Kenyan content. From the things that you wear to the things that you watch. I think this is a golden opportunity to, create our own things. And we've already seen that we can
consume Kenyan.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And he told social media, stop being cheap. That's what Kevin wasn't saying.
When I had that, the soundtrack that was playing when the president was talking was the song Wajinga Nini by King Kaka. Because, some of the stuff you see on social media is written by some miscreants, I don't know from where. And they think, I don't know, they cannot see beyond their noses. The kind of action of sending flowers out there to help to another country
goes way beyond
just the current. In the future, you need to invest in some of these things, and we are the ones who are going to benefit in the future.
Fantastic. So he also told fellow Kenyans, this is the time to get to know each other better, get to know your family better, your wife better, your husband better, whatever.
I love that he threw that in.
He did, and I think he was saying that you can choose to see the bright side of certain things that are happening right now. So if we move on, we have the Standard, where SONKO is taking on Uhuru. What is the context?
SONKO takes on Uhuru. Now, there is a case in court, I think, by Okia Omtata, and I'm sure he's not doing it on his own behalf. He's doing it on behalf of someone else. But anyway, that's SONKO actually mentioned that case, and he said that they have gone to court to reverse they call it the deed, transfer deed of functions that was the function that was transferred to the Nairobi Metropolitan Services from the Nairobi County government. And he wants all those functions that were transferred to revert back to the Nairobi County government. Now, I do not know why SONKO feels so brave to take on Uhuru Kenyatta right now. Is it because he's met RUTO in the past couple of days? I do not know. But look,
he came out of his trance and he wants his city back.
He wants his city back. But well, fair enough. It's okay to want your city back. But there must be, if you see these guys behaving so confidently, there must be something that they're planning. And in my view, SONKO would not be, it's not, and today I will not support him. I think these guys are planning some form of insurrections from the slums.
But Uhuru has one in the chamber. He still has an impeachment that could, proceedings could go on and follow on for SONKO. SONKO was given sort of a break with this move, and he was saved, and so he's still the governor. But I think if he continues on in this way, then, impeachment, I think, is a very credible strategy.
But also, in which universe would this headline ever be true? SONKO takes on Uhuru. It's not possible. I don't think at all. So
let me tell you, if they maybe let's assume it is true. If it is true, they will be crushed. They will be crushed because the man of the system takes the day. So they can fight for whatever time you want. You sort it out.
I have differing thoughts, but all right. In the Star, Camry is exploring a corona herbal cure.
And other stories.
Yeah, and I think this is another stories. But I think the Star has taken on this strategy to sort of highlight interesting things that are coming out of this pandemic, and I think this is a good thing. So Camry is exploring an in-house product that they have called Zedupex. Zedupex is usually used to treat the herpes simplex, and so they're trying to see whether this can also then be used for, curing or being a vaccine for COVID-19. I think it's not the first time we're seeing these herbal extracts being used to
Have
make
you guys heard
medicines.
of the cure that's happening in Mauritius? The president that is selling a bottled drink, I think it's Mauritius, I believe, a bottled drink that is said to cure corona.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately,
You said fantastic.
Yeah, you try anything till we get it right in the absence of a cure. Who do we give our winning headline? Or is there a winning headline, or can we give it to a winning speech by the president?
I would say there is no winning headline today, and I think that today we give the winning headline, if we could, to the president for his great speech.
Yes, there you go.
There you go.
To the president.
Absolutely.
Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a three-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes, Daily Nation, you have Ndula, and there's a TV set, and on the TV set is showing caricature of Francis Atwoli, Kotu Secretary General. And today, Uhuru Kenyatta called him Comrade Francis Atwoli. And on the TV is a big mask that is trying to mute Atwoli. And the caption there is Labor Day on mute. I don't think it was on mute today.
Not at all.
I watched Atwoli's speech and all that, and I think the president really likes this man. I don't think it was on mute. Everything that with regard to the workers of this country and celebrating the worker of this country was mentioned today.
This is the Daily Nation, right?
Yes.
So I guess you couple it again with their headline. They're really on a fast track, trying to paint a negative picture of what's happening in the country right now. I'm not for it.
Not for it as well.
Okay, so we move on to the Standard.
Yes, Standard. You have Gado, and you've got drawing of 5 policemen next to a car. And the first policeman is receiving a bribe, transferring to the next, transferring to the next, transferring to the next.
You got the bribe from Corona?
It's a bribe from Corona.
Interesting.
I don't
Spread
like
of
it
the
myself.
bribes.
I don't like it.
And then in the Star we have?
You have what's his name? Ozone. A drawing of frontline soldiers against COVID. And these are our doctors. And he says there, we thank you for your service. Happy Labor Day.
Yeah, I quite like that.
I like
as simple as it is, I do like it as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Simple but also quite meaningful for all the work that they are doing.
Absolutely.
Can we give it our winning cartoon?
To the star.
To the star?
Ozone.
Yes, the star gives us our winning cartoon. So what is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Loonshots: How to Nurture the Crazy Ideas That Win Wars, Cure Diseases and Transform Industries by Safi Bakar.
Nice. But before you do, can I please give a summary?
Please do.
So this week we focused on leadership. On Monday, we did Thinking in Bets, making smarter decisions when you don't have all the facts by Annie Duke.
Yes.
And it got us to recognize that there are exactly two things that determine how our lives turn out: the quality of our decisions and luck. Learning to recognize the difference between the two is what Thinking in Bets is all about.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, we looked at multipliers, how the best leaders make everyone smarter.
Yeah.
And here we saw how leaders who are multipliers are genius makers because they bring out the intelligence in others. They build collective viral intelligence in organizations. Whereas diminishers, their opposites, are absorbed in their own intelligence and deplete the organization of crucial intelligence and capability. On Wednesday, we looked at Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. And this taught us that leadership is about taking care of people. And the key takeaway, a leader needs to be generous and sacrifice to build an organization by making everyone around feel safe and comfortable. On Thursday, we looked at the Culture Code, The Secrets of Highly Successful Groups by Daniel Coyle. And this was a thorough analysis of how humans work together. And that a cohesive group culture enables teams to create performance far beyond the sum of individual capabilities. And 3 specific skills were important to do this. 1, build safety. 2, to share vulnerability. And 3, to establish purpose.
Yes.
And today we're looking at Loonshots.
Yes, Loonshots. How to nurture the crazy ideas that win wars, cure diseases, and transform industries, written by Safi Bakar. So this book teaches a surprisingly new way to think about group behavior and nurturing radical ideas. So he combines his business and science background to share a lot of interesting stories about ideas that change the world. So the book is filled with stories about, for example, how the military dismissed the invention of the radar, how a drug that lowered cholesterol was shelved and killed almost 3 times, and how forest fires and terrorist networks spread. So just like how changing the temperature of a fridge by 1 degree can change water from a solid to a liquid, Loonshots explains how making small shifts in company structure and organization can lead to dramatic outcomes that changes a company's future. So to begin, I think there's an important distinction to make between what the author calls the Loonshots, but also franchises. So a Loonshot is a neglected project, widely dismissed, and the person who champions it is written off as somebody who's crazy. But on the other hand, you have a franchise which focuses on the subsequent iterations or updated versions of an already existing product or service. So he says that it's important to have that balance in hand, nurturing crazy ideas, but also working on and maintaining existing ideas. And he says that obviously, for every world idea, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ideas that are shelved and never see the light of day. And why? It's because they're risky, they're expensive, they're time consuming, and sometimes you don't know if it's going to pay off. And one example of that I really love from the book comes from a story during World War II. And he says how the US military was unprepared for World War II because it didn't support innovation. So he says, had there been predictive markets in 1939 over who would win World War II, all bets would have been in favor of Hitler. And I know that's strange to say right now. But he explains that this is because the Allies, which was Britain, Russia, France, and the USA, lagged behind what Winston Churchill called the secret war. And the secret war here was the race to develop the most effective weaponry. So unlike Germany, which was consistently updating and working on its weaponry, the Allies were not nurturing breakthroughs. And he gives a story of these 2 young men in 1922 who were testing a tool for communication, but instead of it working for communication, it ended up working for detection. So they repeated this experiment several times, and a few days later they submitted this idea to their superiors, and they said this is an idea and a way to detect enemy ships in the front lines. And this actually was one of the first known proposals for the use of a radar in battle. But the Navy completely ignored it. So with no support for their proposal, the guys benched this idea, but then 8 years later they came back to it. So in 1930 they try again. And they conducted all these tests and they tried to convince their superiors again. This is an early warning system for enemy aircraft, that from here we can detect where ships are moving at any given time. But again, they completely ignored it. So they made a request for $5,000 worth of sponsorship, and they were told by their superiors that this may exceed 2 or 3 years. In fact, the wording that they used was, this was a wild dream with practically no chance of real success. So this system was still being field tested in Hawaii by this time. On the day of 7th of December 1941, there was a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, and I think we all know what happened. 353 enemy aircrafts killed 2,403 people. The unfortunate thing is the US Navy already had the key to winning this battle, but they just didn't know it. And today, this is the radar system that we know and appreciate in warfare and other industries today. But it's also the story of a failure to pursue innovation. So in the book, he says that Loonshots changed the world for the better, but the sad thing is that they're opposed so strongly.
And so he gives examples, and I'll give 2 of them, of Loonshots. One of them is Walmart, which is a famous supermarket in America. And it's the most profitable retailer, I think. It's the world's largest company by revenue. Its net worth is about $514 billion. And it's the largest private employer with about 2 million people. So it's pretty big and has big networks. However, it wasn't always like this. So Sam Walton opened stores in rural areas. And this was far from big cities. And at the time, the thinking was not strategic. It was not a disruptive innovation. And that's the thing about Loonshots. Initially, they don't seem like they're going to be disruptive or innovative, but they eventually end up being that way. And so Walmart ended up learning a very valuable lesson, which was there was much more business out there in small town America than anybody, including me, had ever dreamed of. That's Sam Walton's words. And so it became really big and is one of the biggest now. The other example he gives is IKEA. So many of us have bought furniture from IKEA. IKEA started in 1948 by a 22-year-old Swede man named Ingvar Kamprad. Maybe I'm saying this wrong. But his business grew so fast and it really threatened the traditional Swedish furniture store owners. And they even were so threatened by him that they banned him from exhibiting his stuff in the expos that they normally would have. So in response to this, Kamprad filled a large empty warehouse in the Swedish countryside with samples of his furniture for customers to see before they ordered what they wanted. And that was essentially the first IKEA showroom, born out of being pushed out of the main market. And then, interestingly enough, another innovation comes up. When his friend is packing up the table, it couldn't fit into his car, so he dismantled the legs and put it into the boot. And there he got an idea, because there was a rise in shipping costs at the time, and if you shipped it when it was whole, it was more expensive. Then it's in component parts, then it was cheaper. And so that's how they ended up doing the self-assembly gimmick, where you would buy the parts and fix them up,
put it together yourself
in your home. And the orders continue to grow. And then eventually furniture store owners retaliated and forbidded their designers from selling furniture through IKEA. And so he had to then get his own designers. And that's why you get all these, tables named after these interesting names. And that's where it comes from, because he had to create his own interior design team. And then in 1965, he opens the first store in Stockholm, now a proper store. Then he realized that the customers were so many that he had to let some of them go into the back and pick up their own orders. And so with this, self-service grew as part of his company. So you would be able to go to these self-service warehouses that you find now in Dubai and around the world. And collect
your goods yourself.
You literally pick them up yourself. In 2017, IKEA annual sales exceeded $44 billion. And it has about 403 stores in about 49 countries and reaches nearly 1 billion people. And the interesting thing here is that none of the defining elements of what became the planet's largest furniture store began with disrupting the industry. They were just small, crazy ideas explored by this man in a desperate bid to survive.
No, let me tell you a story. of a company called Nokia. Now, Nokia was the biggest phone maker in the early 2000s. Now, it was selling probably half the phones in the smartphone market, half globally. Now, they had a small development team and the culture was full of fun, and they just wanted to innovate. Even if they made mistakes, they still innovated. Now, they came up with this product that had a nice camera at the back of the phone, and also was a smartphone in essence, and it looked exactly like the iPhone that Steve Jobs was about to launch then in the 2000s. Now, they went to this idea to the leadership team at Nokia, and they said, we have found the phone of the future. And this leadership team looked at this phone, they said, you guys are too much ahead of your time. Who is going to buy this phone? 3 years later, Steve Jobs at a podium somewhere unleashed the iPhone. 6 years later, Nokia was out of business. It literally took a decade to chase Nokia out of town. And that's because the leadership team at Nokia did not listen to this development team, all right? And the point here is innovation is a continuous cycle. You have to continue innovating to be able to get ahead of the pack. Now, to ground this to a local reality, I need to tell you a story. And the story is about two cousins named Pablo and Bruno. Now, Pablo and Bruno had a job, and the job was to fill a village tank with water using buckets. They were bucket carriers. Then one day, Pablo got annoyed. Instead of filling the city tank using buckets, he decided to build a pipeline from the river to the tank. It was an impossible task, but Pablo was determined. The people abused him though, and his wife left him because he was broke. But Pablo soldiered on. Then one day, the pipeline was completed, and the village gathered to watch the dream unfold. As the water gushed into the village tank through the pipes, Bruno the bucket carrier stood agog with his buckets. He knew his job was over, and only then did the village understand what Pablo was doing. Pablo is Uhuru Kenyatta for you. Once he's done with Kenya, he will be done with your bucket carriers.
Fantastic.
So the president gave a speech, and then even you also had to give
us.
I am inspired.
Fantastic.
And they know who the bucket carriers are.
Well, interesting. So on a day where we had a winning speech, winning headline from the president, and a winning cartoon from the Star, I want to leave you with this. This book and the speech taught us that new frontiers of the mind are always before us, if they're pioneered with vision and boldness. The breakthroughs that change the course of science, business, politics, history fail many times before they succeed. So have a lovely weekend, have a good Labor Day, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pan Free to Air, and StarTimes.